How about something a little more uplifting? Welcome to Positive Listicles, and today we are counting down on the top 10 positive news stories of 2021. These are crazy times we are living in, and these 10 news stories will give you hope for the remainder of 2021. So here are the top 10 news stories of 2021. Number 10. Alzheimer's patient asks wife to marry him after falling in love for a second time. Love is wonderful the second time around, but it can be all the more special if you don't remember the first time. For Peter Marshall, who suffers from early onset Alzheimer's, forgetting his past has meant a bittersweet chance to fall in love with his wife Lisa and ask her to marry him all over again. Peter and Lisa have been married for 12 years. At 56, his illness has progressed rapidly, but no matter what turn his condition takes, Lisa remains steadfastly by his side because even if he can't remember her name, he knows that he loves her and that she loves him. Last winter, as the Connecticut couple sat on the couch watching a televised wedding, Peter had an inspiration. Not realizing they were already married, he proposed, and a surprised Lisa happily accepted. And so a date was set. Vendors who knew Lisa's event planner daughter donated their services to make the day perfect. Throughout the touching ceremony, Peter beamed at his bride, while sometimes through tears, Lisa smiled back as she made her vows. "It was so perfect. I couldn't have dreamt for a better day. It was so magical," Lisa said. "I can't remember seeing him so happy for so long. I'm the luckiest girl in the world. I've got to do it twice." Though the ceremony took place only a few months ago, Peter has no recollection of the event. But what he's not forgotten is the woman who is never going to leave him. The woman he loves, who loves him back, and when hearts are truly connected, sometimes remembering love can be more than enough. Number 9. A kind doctor forgave $650,000 in medical bills for cancer patients to kick off 2021. If a cancer diagnosis is a patient's worst nightmare, not being able to afford life-saving treatment runs it a close second. One oncologist recently forgave all his patients' outstanding debts, easing his patients' pain a bit to kick off 2021. Dr. Omar Atik founded the Arkansas Cancer Clinic in 1991. Over the years, countless patients received everything from diagnostics to radiation and chemotherapy at the Pine Bluff facility. In February of 2020, the clinic closed due to staffing shortages. At the time, there was close to $650,000 outstanding patient debt on the books. Dr. Atik attributed the large sum to the fact that no patient was ever denied treatment, regardless of whether or not they could pay. After the clinic closed last year, Dr. Atik attempted to settle the debts. He soon realized that many of the folks he treated didn't have the means to pay, especially with so much added financial hardship brought on by the coronavirus pandemic. So with the blessing of his wife Mehreen, he simply elected to stop asking. And to bring in 2021, Dr. Atik sent out cards to nearly 200 of his former patients that read, "The Arkansas Cancer Clinic was proud to have you as a patient." Although various health insurances pay most of the bills for the majority of patients, even the deductibles and co-pays can be burdensome. The clinic has decided to forego all balances owed to the clinic by its patients. Even though he is no longer treating his patients, Dr. Atik found one final way to practice some kindness and compassion on their behalf. Number 8. 2 days after a wedding, bride donates kidney to groom's ex-wife. When a woman marries, she is generally showered with gifts. But one big-hearted bride recently decided it was better to give than to receive. In fact, she gave the biggest of all, the gift of life. Just 2 days after she'd taken her vows, Debbie Neal Strickland in Florida swapped a wedding dress for a hospital gown in order to donate a desperately needed kidney. The lucky recipient, her husband's former wife. Debbie and Jim Strickland have been a devoted couple for a decade. Throughout their courtship, Jim maintained a cordial relationship with his ex, Mylene Mirth, raising their 2 kids amicably, and while Debbie and Mylene weren't particularly close, they got along fine. And that's likely how the relationship would have remained until fate dictated otherwise. Mylene, who'd long suffered from kidney disease, took a turn for the worse at just about the same time she'd learned her daughter was pregnant with her first grandchild. Without a transplant, her odds of survival decreased every day. The hunt for a donor match was on. Mylene's brother wasn't a viable candidate, but miraculously Debbie was. For Debbie, the thought of a child growing up not knowing its grandmother, of a daughter dealing with grief when she should be concentrating on the joys of new motherhood, wasn't something she was willing to let happen if she could do anything to stop it. With a green light on the tissue sample and blood tests, Debbie willingly scheduled the life-saving surgery for just 48 hours after her nuptials. Since the successful procedure, Mylene and Debbie have bonded and now refer to one another as kidney sisters. Mylene is watching her new grandson Jackson grow up from the home she currently shares with her daughter and son-in-law, even as Debbie and Jim's family of 6 foster children and grandkids has expanded to include Mylene and her brood in its loving embrace. And all thanks to a gesture from the heart. Number 7. With a natural disaster in Texas, this furniture store owner heroically offers his store as shelter again. Texas has seen more than its fair share of weather-related calamities. When this winter storm Uri took out the power grid, leaving the state in shambles, one valiant businessman stepped up to make sure his Houston neighbors would have a place to shelter from the cold. Over the course of a 72-hour period, Jim Mattress Mac McInvale opened 2 of his gallery furniture locations as impromptu warming stations. According to the store's website, Mattress Mac and his crew provided 3,000 plus meals and overnight accommodations to more than 700 members of the Houston community. But this isn't Mattress Mac's first storm-related rodeo. In 2005, he welcomed refugees from Hurricane Katrina, and in 2017, he gave succor to victims of Hurricane Harvey. While the store has a diesel-run generator to provide electricity, with only a single functioning water pipe, plumbing became a critical issue. Ensuring COVID-19 protocols were followed added another layer of complexity to the situation. McInvale and his staff rose to the occasion, rigging a solution to meet the plumbing demand and also ensuring that once visitors were wearing masks, they observed proper social distancing before setting in to fill up on warm meals, watch some TV, and get some much needed rest. Number 6. 10 years after Fukushima nuclear disaster, 2 men are still living there taking care of everyone's pets. When clouds of radiation began streaming into the air around the Fukushima nuclear plant, 160,000 residents were told to simply cut and run. However, it seems only 159,998 residents listened. The other 2, Naoto Matsumura and Sake Kato, remained. Evidently, the city possessed not one, but 2 men whose love of animals cracked through the innate sense of self-preservation, men who would give up everything rather than consigning others' beings to starvation. Living within the 12.5-mile exclusion zone around the damaged reactor, the 2 men unrelated to one another, both living alone while taking care of dozens of stray animals that were left behind when the evacuation order was given. 57-year-old Kato has 41 cats who live with him in his home in the mountains, along with a stray dog he adopted named Pochi. Kato says he will remain with his cats and ensure they are comfortable all through their lives. Kato's generosity isn't restricted to his own animals, and he has taken to feeding local wild boars considered pests by the government. Matsumura left the city at first, but returned shortly after for his own animals. Once he returned, the now 55-year-old realized that everyone else's pets and livestock was still there. So he began taking care of a broad community of animals, including pigs, cats, dogs, ponies, ostriches, and cows. He funds the feeding of the animals through local donations and keeps people up to date with news on his blog, posted by using solar power, though he lives without steady electricity or running water. Everything both Kato and Matsumura are doing is technically illegal, and police have ordered them both to leave the area. Yet they seemingly couldn't be less bothered by the government's demands, and both plan to stay there with the animals come what may. Number 5. Hero jumps into Maryland Bay to save toddler's life after crash flings a car seat into the water. Jonathan Bauer is afraid of heights, but that didn't stop him from leaping off a bridge some 25 to 40 feet to the water below to save a little girl's life. On May 2nd, Jonathan and his teenage daughter Awa were running errands when they got caught in a serious 5-car pileup on the Route 90 bridge over Maryland's Assawoman Bay. The accident sent 8 people to the hospital and left a pickup truck dangling precariously over the guardrail. After making sure Awa was okay, Jonathan got out of his car to see if anyone needed help. As he headed towards the teetering truck, its passenger alerted him to a heart-wrenching sight. A toddler ejected from the passenger side was floating in the bay, her pink dress billowing in the waves. Scanning the water for nearby boats that might be able to help, Jonathan found none close by. When he turned his attention back to the little girl, he saw she was in trouble. She had flipped over onto her stomach and her face was in the water, he said. Jonathan yelled to his daughter to pull over the first firefighter or paramedic she saw. Then he simply peeled off his shoes and jumped in, feet first. Surfacing without injury, he swam to the toddler, who appeared to be only semi-conscious. Hefting the child over his shoulder, he patted her back until she started to cough and expel the water from her system. Moments later, boaters Joe and Elena Otel, who'd witnessed the events unfold, arrived. After pulling Jonathan and the 2-year-old to safety, the Otels rushed the pair to the 66th Street ramp, where they were met by waiting paramedics. The little girl was airlifted to Johns Hopkins Children's Center in Baltimore for evaluation and treatment. Jonathan, overwhelmed by the experience, quietly slipped away without taking credit for his brave actions. Even after reports of the incident went public, he initially tried to keep his involvement quiet, preferring to remain an anonymous Good Samaritan.
Number 4.
Judge gave drug dealer a second chance. 16 years later, he swears him in as a lawyer. The difference between finding justice and following the letter of the law sometimes takes a simple act of compassion. Where others might have seen an incorrigible offender, one judge saw promise, and following a hunch, he acted on his intuition. At first glance, Edward Martel, a 27-year-old high school dropout with an extensive arrest record, might not have seemed a prime candidate for rehabilitation. But when he was facing a 20-year drug conviction, instead of meting out the maximum sentence, presiding judge Bruce Morrow gave Martel probation and a challenge. Morrow told Martel the next time he stepped into the courtroom, he expected him to have made something out of himself. He said, "I challenge you to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company instead of being out here selling drugs." Fast forward 16 years, and Martel is standing in front of Judge Morrow again, only this time he's been sworn in as an attorney after passing the Michigan State Bar. While the outcome is sweet, Martel's path wasn't easy or assured. Since there was a very real possibility that his prior criminal record might scuttle his future plans, as he was completing his GED, Martel's guidance counselors discouraged him from pursuing a legal career. After obtaining his associate's degree, Martel went on to score scholarships for both his undergraduate studies and law school. He then clerked at the District of Columbia's Federal Public Defender's Office and eventually was hired by the Perkins Law Group as a researcher and writer. When it came time to take the bar exam, Martel had plenty of supporters in his corner, including Judge Morrow, with whom he'd kept touch over the years. With the help of his law firm mentors, Martel submitted a 1200-plus page application detailing the steps he'd taken to turn his life around. His approval took only 15 minutes. The seeds of a dream he'd planted had finally come to fruition. Martel still has a job with the Perkins Group, only now he'll be a practicing attorney rather than a researcher. And all because one man was willing to take a chance and made a challenge Martel couldn't walk away from.
Number 3. Lone Capitol police officer lured rioters away from Senate chambers. The hero likely saved lives. A US Capitol police officer is being hailed as a hero for cleverly steering a mob away from the Senate chambers during the riots on 6th January. Footage shows Officer Eugene Goodman all alone and just a few steps ahead of rioters. They are waving Confederate flags and shouting at him as they chase him up a flight of stairs inside the Capitol building. Goodman can be seen covertly looking at the entrance of the Senate just a few feet away, then he lures the intimidating rioters in the opposite direction, risking his life. In the video from HuffPost's Igor Bobik, which you can watch here, Goodman can be heard shouting "second floor" into his radio, alerting other officers that rioters are approaching the chamber area and the people who are in there. Just minutes later, authorities managed to seal off the chamber, keeping the people hiding inside safe. Goodman, a veteran of the US Army who served in Iraq, is being praised for his bravery and decisive action in what must have been a harrowing situation. A legislation was introduced to Congress to bestow Goodman with the Congressional Gold Medal for his brave efforts, and he also got a promotion for the presidential swearing in. He escorted Vice President Kamala Harris to the inauguration venue at a swearing in ceremony. He was seen alongside Harris as she arrived at the Capitol to take her oath and leading her to the presidential platform before the swearing in ceremony began. Number 2. Scientists have a genius way to turn face masks into roads. The idea of billions of people going through few masks a week during this pandemic definitely rings alarm bells. But a team of researchers in Melbourne, Australia may have the solution. They've discovered that adding millions of discarded face masks to road paving mixtures would actually lower the cost of the road while diverting billions of them from landfill. Just 1 kilometer of road would need 3 million masks, and the polypropylene plastic used to make single-use surgical face masks also increase the flexibility and durability of the road. G. Lee and other scientists of Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology and Melbourne Technical College published a paper stating that if the percentage of damaged roads in Washington state were repaired with the RCA mask mixture, it would reuse nearly 10 billion masks, sparing American landfills hundreds of millions of tons of trash. With 6 billion masks being used every day, this genius breakthrough is just the positive we need. Number 1. Rail worker who saved child from a train now donates half his reward money to boy's family. After saving the life of a little boy who fell on the tracks, an Indian railway employee went viral for his kindness on the internet. Now he's being praised once again, this time for giving the boy's family money the Ministry of Railways gave him as a reward. Though he has his own family to take care of, when 30-year-old Mayur Shelke was given 50,000 rupees from the ministry in a special ceremony, he decided he'd donate a good portion towards the education of the very child he saved. As news of Shelke's newest act of selflessness spread, his name once again began trending on social media, with many praising his kindness and good spirit. Earlier on April 17th, a small boy who was holding his mother's hand was making their way across a railway platform. Weighed down by a heavy burden on her back and hampered by limited vision, she lost her grip. The child tumbled onto the tracks just as an approaching train barreled towards the station. But in the blink of an eye, Shelke scooped the child to safety, hoisted himself onto the platform a split second before the locomotive thundered past, and a tragedy was averted. Shelke said that he ran towards the child but also thought that he might be in danger too. Still, he thought that he should save him. It's an old saying, but it feels particularly true when thinking of Shelke and his selfless deeds. True heroes really don't wear capes. Multiply the positivity by sharing these sweet stories with your friends on social media.